We'll move on to a posting from Ruben Griffith Kwazi. He's originally from Johannesburg, he told us, but he posted this comment on our wall from the West African country of Ghana. He says, I strongly believe it is because of corruption, as everybody was just talking about, and misuse of funds. In addition, there are no set policies for them to get that assistance. In short, lack of vision, accountability, transparency, and corruption at its peak are major factors. Well, finally, we'll look at Stuart Tukunda from Uganda, and he says, many African nations do not follow the terms and conditions and the strings attached to the assistance. Well, Shaka, it's important for our audience to remember, of course, that MCC's money is actually a grant, contrary to the IMF or the World Bank loans. And I'm someone who lived through structural adjustment policies at some point in my home countries, but also that was the case in many other places in Africa. The MCC is different. You meet the criteria, come up with doable projects, and the U.S. shows you the money. Maybe that's just oversimplifying it, but I believe it's also a legitimate question, which I'm just going to go ahead and ask. Are there actually any strings attached to the aid? If so, what kinds of strings? Shaka?
Well, before we go to Cassandra again, let me go to Eric Chinji, of course, who happened to have at least worked with those institutions that, of course, are tagged with this business of strings attached. The World Bank, for example.
Yes, sir. You're right. I mean, some would see it as strings, others would call them conditionalities, and others would just, and from the perspective of the World Bank, it's it's an attempt to get these countries to live up to their commitments and expectations.
What about the authenticity of the statistics? You did your business in the public affairs section, and therefore you must have been part of that. What about critics who say that some of the statistics, frankly, that come out of those Bretton Woods institutions are the result or reflections of what they would characterize as creative accounting?
Good. Well, the whole science of statistics is not an exact science, actually.
No, it's not.
The folks who not even consider that statistics as a science. The World Bank, the IMF, and others depend as much on the countries generating their own data as the data that's generated by the bank and other institutions. What I can tell you is one of the biggest problems we have on the continent is the absence of credible or verifiable data. That's one of the biggest problems we have. And I think a lot has been said about this. Some governments have taken it seriously and put their statisticians to work and data collectors to work and have provided what is viable data for development interventions. There's nothing you can do about it if the data doesn't exist. And it takes a whole lot to produce the right kind of data. Now, but on the issue of conditionalities, and again, I think at the heart of this question is something Sandra said about partnerships.
Right.
And I think that's been the problem that's plagued the development community over most of the last 5 decades. The fact that the donor organizations did not come into a partnership. They came to identify problems and resolve the problems. And in many cases, and Mariama talked about structural adjustment, in many cases, the actual actors on the ground were not part of the act. And that was the problem. So the key term here is partnerships. If you let the countries take the lead, define the priorities, and have you come in and work with them to meet those priorities, I think you have the outcomes are totally different.
There are also, of course, some critics who will also say that some of these international institutions, sometimes they're used by big Western powers as political tools in terms of their foreign policy.
Well, clearly, I mean, I can see why anybody would say that. If you think about the fact that we prepare these countries to be part of a global system, a global system of exchanges, then clearly, it's easy to extrapolate and say, well, these countries are being brought into the system for the benefit of those who control the system. I can see that.
I see.
But then we all strive to get into that system. We all strive to be part of this global, of globalization.